Hello everybody, this is Dr. Josh Golding, and I am your teacher for Ethics, Philosophy 301, and today is the first day of class, and what I'm going to do today is simply go through the syllabus, which I emailed to all of you, so all of you should have the syllabus in your inbox. And so, while normally I would use the board, today, I'm not going to use the board because I'm just going to walk through the syllabus with you, talk about what ethics is in general, and how the course is going to run, some of the nuts and bolts of the class. And if you'll have any questions, you'll simply email me or call me, and we'll take it from there. So today, we're not probably going to have a full hour and 15-minute class. It's going to be probably more like 45 minutes to an hour. But in general, when we have a lecture, it's going to be close to an hour and 15 minutes. So let me just, if you have the syllabus, perhaps you could pull it up or print it out and have it with you as I go through, in case you want to make any notations on the syllabus. Again, my name is Dr. Josh Golding, and I'm very happy to be teaching this class. This is not the optimal way of doing this class, or maybe any class, but we're going to try to do the best we can, and I'm sure there are going to be some bumps along the road, but this is the situation, and we'll just have to make the best of it. So first of all, you'll notice that everything in this syllabus is tentative due to possible changes because of the virus or because of other factors that may require some kind of change. But as far as I'm concerned, everything on this syllabus should be pretty stable. First of all, there are 3 sections of ethics, and this lecture is for all 3 sections. So if you're in section 9, the class would normally be meeting at 9:25 to 10:40. If you're in section 10, the class would be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:15 to 1:30. And if you're in section 11, then the class would normally be meeting from 1:40 to 2:55 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But basically, since it's ethics, this portion of the class is going to be one lecture that all of the sections can view. On the syllabus, you have my cell phone number. Please feel free to use the cell phone number 502-548-9542. You can text me, you can WhatsApp me. I'll get back to that in a minute. My email is the regular Bellarmine address, jgolding@bellarmine.edu. And I'm going to have virtual office hours for the class. What I mean by that is on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 11 and 12 in the morning, I'm going to make myself available so that if you call me, I will answer the phone right away, unless, of course, I'm on the phone with another student, or if you email me, I should be able to give you an immediate response. So that's my office hour. You may want to, if you want to talk to me for a while, it might be a good idea to let me know that you plan to ask me to speak with you for more than 5 minutes. That might be a good idea to, so to speak, make an appointment. You can do that by email or by texting me. We can also do WhatsApp video chat or some kind of video chat with the regular cell phone, if that works, if that's desirable. I'm totally open to that, and the university has unfortunately there's a reason for it, of course. Meetings in person are discouraged because of the virus. So unfortunately, I don't plan to meet with you in person. I will say, if for some reason you really want to meet with me in person, we can set that up with social distancing, of course, or meet outside in the quad and do what we need. But in general, we should not be meeting in person because of the virus. Now, this class is going to have 2 different components. I explained this on the first page of the syllabus over here. what I've decided to do is all the lecturing is going to be not live. In other words, I'm recording this video and I'm going to post it. I'm going to post it on a YouTube channel, and I'll be sending you the link to the YouTube video. I'm also going to try to post it on the Moodle page for your section, okay? So you're going to be getting a notification that from me that I have, just like we did for today's class, I'm going to send you an email ahead of time saying, hey, I'm posting a lecture, watch it tomorrow or when you can. Ideally, you should watch the lecture when it is the appropriate time for your section, ideally. But if you don't, for some reason, you want to maybe watch it at night or watch it another time, that's okay, but you shouldn't fall too far behind in just sort of, watching the lectures all at once as you get, later on in the semester. So to keep up with the class, watch the lectures in a timely manner. Now, but we need to have also an interactive aspect or portion of the class. And so what I've decided to do is it's basically going to be pretty much starting September 3rd, which is a Thursday. Every other Thursday, there's going to be a live discussion using Microsoft Teams. So on the syllabus, I've listed the dates on the second page of the syllabus, I've listed the dates for when that live chat or live discussion using Microsoft Teams is going to be held. So for those live discussions, each of the sections are going to be at the appropriate time for that section. Okay, so obviously if you're in section 9, then on Thursday, September 3rd, you want to be available to be participating in a Microsoft Teams live discussion with all of your classmates in your section. And if you're in the second section, or if you're in section 10 or section 11, then you'd be getting on the live discussion at your time slot. Okay, I hope that's clear. The idea is basically going to be that I'm going to be lecturing about the material, and we're going to talk about what this class is about very shortly, but just want to get through this important aspect, and that is that the lectures I don't think need to be seen live. So that's why I'm recording it, and you can watch it at your leisure. Ideally, you should watch it at the appropriate time for the class, but you don't have to interact during the lecture. But every few classes or so, we are going to have a discussion about the material, about what we learned during the lecture and what we learned in the readings. Okay, and I may give you some discussion questions ahead of time to think about for the live discussion on Microsoft Teams. So I hope that is all clear. And again, if you have any questions, please email me or call me. Now, let's talk a little bit about what the substance of this class is about finally. So ethics is something I think that I hope we're all somewhat familiar with. And by the way, in my class, I use the terms ethics and morality interchangeably, okay? The basic question that this class seeks to investigate is, what is ethics? Where does it come from? What is its basis? How do we make decisions about ethical questions? I think that everybody has moral beliefs or ethical beliefs. I'm 99.9% certain that everyone who's listening to this video believes that certain things are morally right and certain things are morally wrong. Certain things are ethically right or ethically wrong. Again, I use those two terms interchangeably, ethics, morality, whatever that is, that's what we're trying in some way to figure out. What is ethics? Now, there's a bunch of questions that we're going to be getting into. And so I have listed, you can read, again, on page 2, you can read the course description. You may have read it already from the catalog. This course is going to focus on the following 4 sets of issues. So I'm going to go through a sort of little explanation of what each of these 4 issues or questions are, and then we'll talk a bit about the methodology of how we're going to investigate these questions. But as you can see from the second page of the syllabus, the first topic that we're going to be getting into is what we might call the foundation of morality. And I already, in a way, alluded to that. The foundation of morality, the question there is, what is the basis of morality? Now, there are different theories. There are different views that philosophers, other people over the ages, throughout the centuries, have suggested or articulated or argued for regarding what is the basis of ethics. So, for example, some people would say that it comes from God. Okay, that's one view that we're going to be looking at, particularly when we get to the very famous Catholic philosopher, very famous philosopher in the Middle Ages known as St. Thomas Aquinas. You may have heard of Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas, being a Christian, he has a very, what we might call, theistic view of what ethics is about. Ethics comes from God. And so we'll see that when we get to it. Of course, today we're not going to try to answer these questions. We're just going to sort of float these issues and questions out there for you to ponder and think about a little bit. And then as we go through the semester, we're going to be seeing, reading, and thinking about, reflecting on some different views about what is the basis of ethics. Some philosophers, we're going to see this particularly when we get to Plato, which is going to be our first reading. And I will give you your first reading assignment toward the end of this video here. But Plato and to a large degree Aristotle, his famous student, they claim that ethics or morality is based on reason, okay? Reason, intellectually, we're able to figure out, we're able to somehow know what is good and what is bad. And we're able, by using rational means, to understand and to know how a human being ought to live his or her life. So that's another theory. Now, you could possibly combine that with a divine sort of theory or a theistic view about what ethics is, that maybe it's a little bit of both that it's rational and that it's God-given. That's possible. Another view has to do with the idea of emotions or passions. We'll see later on when we get to the philosopher David Hume, Hume. And by the way, you don't have to take all of this down today because everything I say today is going to be ultimately repeated. So it's more important probably today to just listen and reflect rather than to take notes. But of course, if you want to take notes, you're certainly welcome to do so. But getting back to my man David Hume, Hume, David Hume lived in the 1700s, and he claimed that our moral beliefs are not from God, really. They're not from reason. They are from emotion. That we have certain feelings and passions about ourselves and about our fellow human beings. And from these feelings or passions, particularly the feeling of sympathy, which is a very strong human emotion, although not everybody seems to have enough of it perhaps, but this was David Hume's view that morality is grounded in, is based on feelings or certain kinds of passions. Another possible view is that morality is a result of evolution of some sort, okay? In other words, in order for human beings to continue to survive, human beings, in a way, had to come up with something like a moral code or a moral system to live by. So that, according to this theory, moral beliefs are grounded in the evolutionary process of collective self-preservation. Now, I've left, these are just some examples of where you might think morality comes from. There may be some other theories. Some philosophers, as we'll see, believe that morality stems from a collective human desire to be as happy as possible. We all want to be happy. This is what we're going to see when we get to John Stuart Mill later on in the course. John Stuart Mill was a utilitarian. You don't really need to take that term down now, but the point is John Stuart Mill, British philosopher living in the 1800s, he claimed that human beings collectively want happiness. And in order to promote the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, we've sort of come up with, invented, as it were, moral rules. And if we live by those moral rules, we are all going to be happier in the long run. So this is just a mere sampling of some of the different views that we're going to be seeing throughout the semester. But again, the question is, what is morality or ethics? What's it based on? Where does it come from? And is there some way, related to this, is there some principled way? Is there some, what I mean by that, is there some sort of systematic way that we can figure out what is right or wrong in a given situation? Now, I said before that a lot of people have moral beliefs. I think, I think everybody has moral beliefs. We don't always disagree. We don't always agree. I meant to say we don't always agree on what is moral or immoral, okay? Some people, for example, believe that abortion is immoral under all circumstances, and some people believe that abortion is always morally permissible in all circumstances, and then there's all sorts of views in between. So there are disagreements about what is moral or not moral. And one of the questions that we're interested in this class is there some, if we can figure out, or if we have some kind of a theory about what morality is based on, then that might give us a clue as to perhaps resolving some of these moral disputes or trying to figure out who's right about whatever the moral question may happen to be. Anyway, the basic question of this class is, what is morality? Where does it come from? What's it based on? That is topic number one. Let's move on to the second topic. Again, I'm on page 2 of the syllabus, moral relativism versus moral universalism. This is a controversy that many philosophers and many ordinary people, philosophers and others, get into. Now, what is meant by the term moral relativism, that is a view that some people have, and probably some of you, I suspect, have this view too, at least to some degree. Moral relativism is the view that what's moral is relative to or dependent on a given time, a given place, a given culture. Okay, so the moral relativist is someone who believes that, hey, look, what's moral today in the 21st century in the United States of America was not necessarily moral or correct or right or wrong back in the 1500s in Spain, or maybe in the times of the Romans back in the first century of our era. The relativist believes that morality can, as it were, change from place to place. Okay, that is the relativistic view. Now, a moral universalist is someone who believes that, no, there's some basic universal code of morality, universal meaning applies to all equally everywhere at all times, that all human beings ought to follow. The moral universalist recognizes that not everybody agrees with that view, but the moral universalist is the person who says there are certain things, at least some things, okay, that everyone ought to agree is wrong, and there are certain things, actions, character traits that everyone ought to agree are right or morally proper to do, or ethically right. So, for example, a moral universalist might say something like, hey, look, murder is wrong everywhere. Murdering, by that I mean killing an innocent person, doing something like mass murdering a bunch of people for no reason other than the fact that you don't happen to like the way they look. Okay? Many moral universalists would probably give that as an example of something that they believe is always wrong everywhere at all times. And even though there may have been, people throughout the ages who did go ahead and mass murder people, as we know, nevertheless, that was wrong and they shouldn't have done it. The moral relativist, on the other hand, seems to be saying that, what's moral here is not necessarily moral there. There is no standard, single, universal code that applies to all human beings. So again, we're not trying to settle this today. We're not trying to give the answer to this question today. But this is one of the issues that we're going to be touching upon as we go through the semester. Okay, another question, moving down again on page 2 of the syllabus, moral motivation. This is a question that I find very interesting myself. Moral motivation, I'll just read the question from the syllabus. Why should a person be moral or do the right thing? What is the relationship between morality and happiness? Okay, in other words, motivation, right? Motivation means why are you doing what you're doing, okay? Generally speaking, when people behave or act, there's some reason or there's some motive for why they're doing what they're doing. Okay, so sometimes you do things because you enjoy them. Sometimes you do things because you feel you have to or you must. Well, when it comes to morality, okay, what is the motivation? What is the reason for why people should behave morally? Okay, very often we do things because one theory is that people act on the basis of pleasure or pain. Okay, it's certainly something that is a very powerful motivation for, I think, all of us. If something gives me pleasure, I'm going to have a motivation to do it. If something is going to give me pain, or I believe it's going to be painful to do it, then I probably have a motivation not to do it, right? So one of the big motivations in life is pleasure or pain, joy or happiness. Is that the only motivation? Some people would want to argue that the reason or motive for behaving morally should not be because it gives me pleasure or because it can avoid some kind of pain. The question then would be, okay, is that what morality is about? What's the answer? Do people behave morally, or should people behave morally because of pleasure pain, because of fear of God? I mean, that would be one possible answer to the question, that people are going to behave morally if and only if they have a fear of God, if God exists. Or is moral behavior driven by social sanctions? Meaning by that we know, for example, that if we, at least in the United States, if we commit murder and we don't get away with it, well, then we're going to be possibly punished with maybe even the death penalty. That could be a motivation for behaving in accord with some moral rule. So the question, though, is, all right, what is the nature of moral motivation? And we're going to see that different philosophers that we study in this class have a different answer to that question. What is the relationship between morality and happiness? Well, we all, I think, everybody wants to be happy. The nature of happiness itself is a philosophical issue. What is happiness? A lot of people sort of maybe think they know what happiness is, or some people say happiness is impossible to define. But I think it's true that everyone would agree that a lot of people, if not everybody, want to be happy. Exactly what happiness is, maybe we're not so sure, but we all want to be happy. Well, how does morality relate to happiness? Some philosophers would argue that they don't necessarily coincide, because it seems, at least very often, that doing the moral thing is not necessarily going to make you happy. Sometimes doing the moral thing is going to make you sad or be disappointing. Sometimes what leads to happiness may seem to be different from the moral thing. Now, other philosophers might try to argue that in the end, in the final analysis, really morality and happiness go together. That if you live a moral life, that is going to promote your own happiness in some way? So this is again, a very controversial question that throughout the ages, different philosophers have given different answers to. And we're going to be exploring some of those views as we go through the semester. Okay, finally, I have listed on this second page of the syllabus another issue. The last one I have on this page is religion and morality. What is the relationship between religious perspectives and morality? A question that some people ask is, does morality require the existence of God as a foundation? Again, there are going to be different views to this, different answers to this question, different views. Some people are going to claim that if there is no God, then everything is basically a free-for-all. Okay? This view has been argued by some people that without God as a foundation for morality, a sort of perfect being who created the world, designed the world in the way that this being chose to, and set down certain patterns for how humans are supposed to behave, some people would argue that without God, if God doesn't exist, then really we're just doing whatever the hell we want to do, and sometimes we get caught and punished, and sometimes we don't. Other philosophers, many of the philosophers that we're going to be exploring, studying this semester, we're trying to argue that even without a God, there's still a moral framework that humans ought to follow. There's still a motivation for why human beings should be moral, and we'll see what Thomas Aquinas has to say about this. Actually, when we get to Thomas Aquinas, we'll see that his view is a little more complicated than you might have thought. But anyway, these are 4 issues that we're going to be discussing as we go through the semester. Now, I just want to say one thing about this as a philosophy course, this is a course in the philosophy department, as you know. Now, we're not merely interested in exploring different answers to this question that different people have given. That's part of it. We are interested in not just what is someone's view about these questions, but what argument, what rationale can they give to support their claim? Okay, philosophers are interested in claims and arguments. I presume that all of you took intro philosophy, and you got a feel for this, or maybe you studied philosophy in some other form, that philosophers seek to not just make claims about important matters, but also give arguments to support their views about those matters. And what we're going to be doing in this class, the methodology, if you will, for this class, so now I'm kind of moving to page 3 of the syllabus, methodology of the course. We're going to read selections from the classic texts. The book that I've chosen for this class is a book that is arranged in a historical order. It starts with Plato, there's a selection from Plato, then there's a selection from Aristotle. We're not going to do the entire book. Let me just say, of course, the title of the book is Great Traditions in Ethics. It's the book that was assigned for this class. We're not going to be able to do every single reading in the book. We're going to do certain selections from the book. And what this book basically has is selections from the great philosophers throughout the ages, starting with Plato, then Aristotle. We're going to move into St. Thomas Aquinas, then we're going to do some of the more modern and recent famous philosophers. And we're going to see how they try to answer some or all of the questions that I've been talking about. But we're going to be reading those selections, looking at their arguments. I'm going to assign readings for each and every lecture. Well, some of the lectures may be on the same reading because some of the readings are complex and a little dense. So let me go ahead right now and give you your first reading assignment, which will be covered more or less in the next lecture, which I'm going to post on next Tuesday morning sometime, okay, because your next class for this class should be on next Tuesday. So sometime next week, early next week, on Monday evening perhaps. I might even post the lecture on Monday evening, but certainly by Tuesday at 9:25, which is the first of these 3 sections, the video lecture on Plato is going to start. Okay, so your reading for Plato is to look at chapter 2 of the book, okay? Chapter 1 of this book is an introductory chapter, which you do not have to read. You may read it, you might find it interesting and helpful, but the main thing you want to do for next time is take a look at chapter 2 of the book, Great Traditions in Ethics. It's a selection from Plato. Now, if you don't have time to get through the whole chapter, that's fine, because we're going to spend several sessions on Plato. Okay, so if you can read just even the first few pages of the Plato reading, chapter 2 from the book, that would be wonderful. And that's what I will talk about in the next lecture. Okay? What we're going to do, I'm going to lecture about what's in the reading, what is Plato saying, going to talk a little bit about what his arguments are. And I might give you a few suggestions about, well, he says this. Does that sound right to you? What about this? What about that? And then eventually when we get to our live discussion, we'll be able to go through some of those questions and reflections on Plato. Because again, the point of this class is not merely to learn what did Plato say, what did Aristotle say, what did Aquinas say about these questions. The point of this class is to do that plus critically reflect and analyze and consider whether we agree with what Plato said or Aristotle or Aquinas. And eventually the goal is to sort of form our own view about what we think morality is toward the end of the class. That might pop up on the final. What is your view about ethics? And in what ways is it similar or different to the philosophers that we've studied during this class? Okay. I hope this is clear. I've listed on page 3, continuing on page 3, the learning outcomes for this class. You don't have to worry about that too much. That's basically pretty straightforward and self-evident. Those are the learning outcomes for this class. Now, let's talk about assessment and grading. I'm sure you want to talk about this a little bit because everybody probably wants to do well in this class and get a decent grade. So basically, how are we going to do this? There's going to be essentially 4 pieces of work that you do for this class that gets graded. You're supposed to do the readings, you're supposed to listen to the lectures, but you don't necessarily get a grade on whether you listen to the lecture or not. I'm assuming that you're going to listen to the lectures. Well, how do you get graded? There's going to be 2 papers for this class. The due dates for those 2 papers are listed toward the bottom of page 3. The first paper is due on October 15th. The second paper is due on November 12th. Now, I'm not going to go into right now what the paper assignment is. There's going to be an assignment for your paper. It's going to be pretty straightforward. It's not going to be a research paper. It's going to be an assignment that has to do with something that we've covered in the class. Okay? It's going to be a very straightforward paper. So you're going to have to do a paper due October 15th, a paper due November 12th, which I will talk a little bit more about as we get into the semester. Then there's going to be a final exam. Now, of course, the final exam is going to be online. It's going to be basically a series of essay questions that you're going to have to try to answer and submit online during the time that the final is scheduled, which, of course, on the bottom of page 3 there, we have the time slots for your final in December. So now, class participation counts 10% of each of those things. The 2 papers and the final each are worth 30% of the grade. Class participation is worth 10% of the grade. Now, by class participation is meant that when we have those live discussion classes, You get on the class, you get online with the Microsoft Teams thing, and you participate in the discussion. Now, I realize it's not going to be easy by any means for everyone to speak up during the live class discussion. We have, in each of these sections, there's 26 people. And in a class of 26 people online, I don't think everyone is going to have a chance or even maybe even want to speak up every single class. Now, the normal thing that happens in a class is that there are certain people who like speaking, and that's wonderful, and there are certain people who are, maybe they're shy or they're reticent or whatever reason they don't like speaking up a lot. I understand that. That's okay. The main thing is show up and participate to some degree in the discussion. Be somewhat interactive here and there, not every single class. And I may have to ask a student, sometimes it happens, to please hold it a little bit on the comments. Maybe I might feel that a person is not hogging the floor, but not giving other people enough chance to speak up. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but we'll go with the flow, and everything will be good. If you show up to the classes and participate here and there, show me that you're doing the work, show me that you're interested, you'll get you'll definitely get your 10% worth of class participation points when it comes to the final grade. Okay, now I believe that the rest of everything on this syllabus, basically reached the bottom of, well, I do say on the top of page 4, I realize that there are going to be times when you don't show up to the live discussion. If you have to miss a class, it's a good idea to send me an email explaining why.